vacation?
I think so, especially this week. It's
Well, it's, you know, there's snow coming, and
there's snow here.
no, there's like buffalo snow coming. Yeah. Yeah, better go see your mom.
I think I hear her calling.
It's only gonna be 20 centimeters.
She has to leave because of that 6-month thing and come back every once in a while.
Yeah.
All right, 7 o'clock. Call this meeting to order. And adoption of the agenda.
I'll move. Oh, sorry.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda.
No more from the peanut gallery,
All those in favor? Oh,
5.1,
additions.
yeah, International Day of Disabled Persons, and it's for
Yes,
December
thank you.
3rd, so that's an urgent matter.
And that's going into 5F1 or I. And then we have Brian Panasik, Councilor's report.
Oh, yeah, no, that was, I can do that on my regular one, but I also wanted to just add an in-camera item on personnel. We talked about.
Any further additions? Seeing none.
I have a question on the in-camera personnel. It seems to me that at a different time, you told us we couldn't do that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because normally we come to administration, and because you have to try to justify why it's an urgent matter, and because it's personnel, you cannot explain it here. So preferably be nice for administration at least to have that information, yeah.
It's not urgent, so it could wait.
That it was on December 10th.
Well, let's put it on for tonight. If we get to it tonight, then great. We could amend and adopt the agenda as we wish. With two-thirds acceptance.
Again, keeping in mind, then if it's personnel, it's regarding the CEO.
No, oh, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. It could be.
Yeah, and that's why, and in terms of things that you add in the last minute, they really have to be urgent. And if it's not an urgent matter, then it's something that has to come to the administration to put on. So we create a big situation here because it's an in-camera session and yet you cannot justify it by saying anything.
Yeah, well, I know what I wanted to discuss isn't urgent in terms of if we don't deal with it tonight, that there's a problem, so it could possibly wait.
Okay. Again, personnel, I mean, we have one employee.
No, you don't. Excuse me, Mr. Chairperson. But I don't know, we've had that discussion before, and it is not. We only have one employee, unless you can show me in the MGA Act where it says we only have one employee, and it doesn't say that anymore. So, and we have never adopted the Carver model in this council. So no, we do not have one employee.
And the debate continues.
Indeed it does.
Yeah.
So if it's not urgent, then we can,
We could leave it off.
okay. So aside from 5FI, any other agenda items, additions? Seeing none. Yeah, have an adoption of the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented. Or else amended.
All those in favor? Carried. And scheduled delegations. Seeing none. Public delegations. Please come up, state your name. And just to be fair, we've got a lot on budget issues to deal with, and so we'll try to keep it
I'm gonna make this very short. I am Lois Dunn, I'm here with the Children's Resource Council. I am here basically to inform the council, that we bought the house of furniture. And, we sent a letter to Kelly and, just with some requests about, parking and all those things. So if you could make sure that letter is read, we'd appreciate that and respond to it. And then also we sent a letter about, being tax exempted since we are a nonprofit organization. And, if you can make sure that is read and deal with our issue, we'd appreciate it. That's it from me. This young gentleman wants to say something.
Traditionally, council has always had a member on the CRC board, and recently it was decided not to, and I'm here to say that I think that's a silly decision. I know you guys have your reasons. Here's our reasons to have somebody, doesn't matter who, from council on the CRC. A lot of what's on here is stuff that council would know quicker than us coming to a meeting. You would be informed of what's happening with our board. We are a board that you guys send some money to. I always like to know where my money's going. It keeps you connected to the community, being involved on these community boards, be it our board or whatever, the Chamber of Commerce, I'm just throwing these out there, or the food bank, or different organizations. And when they ask for a representative from council, it's not to waste your time, it's to keep you informed as to what's happening in the community. It's to keep your finger on the pulse of the community, because if you sequester yourself to the point where you're only on internal boards, where it's only town council and MD council, you lose touch with what's happening in the community. And as a council, that is probably the worst thing that can happen, is losing touch with the community at large. So I'm here as a member of the CRC to ask that, and I don't care who it is, appoint somebody please to come to our meetings, and they don't take long. There's food. No takers of that. But I think it's really important that we have a council representative there.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
See, that's shorter than I usually have.
It is. Thank you very much.
Have a good budget meeting.
Yes, we will. Thank you. Any other public delegations? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes from regular council meeting of November 12th, 2014, 3A, page 3.
Next time, could we ask questions, please?
Yes.
Next time.
Public delegation.
Yep. Your information. Get a full picture.
Can. Back to 3A1. Councilor Mack.
I make a motion to adopt the regular meeting of council from November the 12th, 2014.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. 3B, business arising. Any? Public hearings on 4. Just rolling right along. And 5, new business, none at this stage, none was added. And 5A, finance, here we go. 1, on page 12, proposed bylaw 08214 to amend the utility rate schedule. Councilor Panassi.
I'll make the motion that council give third and final reading to bylaw 08-2014, a bylaw to amend the utility rate this the 26th day of November 2014.
I call for a recorded vote, and at the same time, I'd like to bring back the idea that I've discussed for the last month and a half that if we're told the taxes have been subsidizing the utilities, if we're going to raise the utilities from being in the middle to being the highest, then we decrease the same dollar amount from the taxes since we're no longer subsidizing. I don't see anything given in here or discussion on that item.
And that's something we certainly can discuss. I think that's important that we can do that. So we have a motion. We have a motion on the floor. Discussion.
I agree. If we're gonna see this passed, which brings some equality to the water rate, we have to see the result of that amount of money in the budget. And I haven't seen it, but I haven't really had an opportunity to dissect it to the point where is it actually reflected in this at all?
So what you're trying to say is that the total value of this utility rates bylaw, if passed, is about $417,000.
Right.
So that increases that user fee. You like to see the tax revenue reduced by the same amount. So a separate policy will be made after the bylaw has been, a separate resolution can be made after this bylaw passes.
Councillor Dunn.
Mayor Cox had asked, a while back to get, when we were looking at this, I know the rec board is probably one of the prime users of the utilities. With this increase, what's the impact to them?
Councillor Enter.
I'm gonna guess that the cost to the aquatic center will increase dramatically, and we'll come back with a bigger budget. What else are we gonna do? We could close it. That ain't gonna be acceptable.
Mayor Cox.
I actually did ask many times for the 10 biggest users of our water so that we could see which ones were going to be impacted the most on this. Still have not got that information. So this time I'm going to make a resolution at the end of this one that I'd like to know who is the biggest users of our water in this town. I'm also looking at the fact that I believe that this increase includes the total amortization of all the infrastructure. And I'm also of the opinion that we are not going to be replacing the total infrastructure with tax dollars. There already is a wastewater grant available to municipalities that apply, and the fact that there is a grant available should offset some of the amortization costs that are included in this type of calculation. So, given the fact that you're asking the taxpayers to completely cover all the costs, I don't think that's fair to them. So, the recorded vote, I'll be voting against this.
Councillor Passy.
I totally agree that with the discussion that if we do it and there's $417,000 more income, it definitely has to come off of the tax base. I see that for sure. I'm not sure about the depreciation issue and whether that should be included in this or not. I mean, all of the things have to be used for accounting purposes. We know that it's a requirement by municipal affairs. So it has to be there. Do we need to take that into account in our pricing structure? probably not, but I think we probably should, to make sure that it's a fair, it truly reflects our costs, so that when we are selling our water to other users, it truly reflects the costs of our water. So I think that it's probably not a bad thing to keep it in there.
And Councillor Hunter.
Okay, just to go back to an earlier point in the discussion, this started in February, and I do agree on a cost recovery. Our superintendent supplied us with a list of local municipalities and their costs. I asked him for an average amount of water used for a family of 4. He gave me an amount. I did the math. I presented it to everybody at council. Of all the communities there, we were smack dab in the middle, like it made sense. There was one really low, one really high, and the rest of us were all in the middle. So if we move forward with this, where are we going? What's the new cost? What is our goal? I don't know why our costs are so high.
Mayor Cox.
Actually, given the fact that if we move forward with this is going to be setting different costs, I'd like to see what impact this would have. Again, another calculation. There's not enough information for me to make a good decision on this at this point. And going back to what Councillor Panasic said about the amortization has to be included, Municipal Affairs said that you can include however much of the amortization you want in your budget. Some municipalities don't include any amortization in their budget. They're just skipping along trying to balance their operating costs without amortization. I don't think that that's a fiscally responsible way to go, but I also don't think that making the taxpayers 100% responsible for amortization is fiscally responsible either, when we know that we are going to be getting grants for some infrastructure.
Councillor Panasic.
And just with that is, again, we've got, if the income is coming in and it's being offset by what's being used in the taxes, I don't think it's going to be that much of an impact. I think that's the key thing in all of this, and we also know from some of those other graphs that we're in the highest range when it comes to the tax rates, and it looks really bad when our income taxes are the highest in the land, that if we can use this, bring our tax rates down, we're more in the middle. According to what Quentin had put together in comparing this, we're at the upper end, but we're not the highest. There seems to be sort of two different schools of thought on these rates, and one is around the $70, $80 range, and the other ones are around the $100 range. So we're in. With this increase, we'd be moving from the $80 range to the $100 range, but it does lower our income tax, which brings us from the highest point in property tax wise down, and I think that we need to find ways of bringing that down. The other, just one last one, is that I also think that in the end of the day, one of the things that we have to do is really look at the costs of the water of that budget and see if we can bring it down, which in the future might bring those rates down a little bit, because I think there might be some room to reduce those costs in that budget.
If I may, I don't disagree with what's being said. Our utilities have been subsidized by our high tax rates. But what I'm hearing is an all or nothing. And what I propose is possibly looking at an incremental increase in our water rates and incremental proportionate to the increase reduction in our mill. It allows for us to ease into the increase. When we talk about the increase and the mill rate, that's all fine and dandy for homeowners. But for those people who are on the lower end of the socioeconomic scale, who are renting, who are trying to make ends meet, hardworking families, to increase the water and utility rates all at once would be devastating for a lot of families. If they have 3 or 4 kids and they're trying to manage and budget as best they can, and then all of a sudden they get hit with this huge increase, I don't know if that's fiscally responsible or fair either. I think if we approach this in an incremental way, where we gradually raise it by thirds, we'll say, we have 3 years left in our mandate, raise it up 1/3, reduce 1/3, raise, reduce, then we're giving ourselves the opportunity to reduce our taxes without creating hardship on ourselves and without creating undue hardship on those families who can least afford these kinds of increases that we're talking about, all or nothing sort of winner take all. It would be devastating for a lot of families in this community, I think. So if we look at it from that standpoint, maybe that's where we can balance this out, be fiscally responsible, and at the same time helping to reduce the taxes and softening the blow. But it has to happen. I don't disagree with you. I just don't think an all or nothing. Councillor Rose.
Are you talking flat rate or water rate?
Well, if we're increasing the water rates or the flat rate, but if the increase is going to be there in the utilities, whatever that proportion is that we raise, then we decrease our mill by that much incrementally each year, so that by year 3, Mr. Walker and the town has the confidence that they know that they're able to pay for the utilities and pay for our infrastructure, and at the same time the taxpayers can see that we're doing everything we can to bring in the taxes for them in a fair and equitable way.
Because I agree that our flat rate, the increase in our flat rate is what's going to be the most troublesome.
Yep.
Because it's $15 a month per household.
Right.
So if we were to do that incrementally, the actual rate increase in the water rate, we're undercharging for water. We have been undercharging for water. The MD charges quite a bit more than we charge for this. I mean, we sell the water to the MD for the same rate as to our taxpayers, but they sell it to their taxpayers at a much higher rate, right?
Correct.
So I think that I think that, I agree that we could maybe look at bringing up our water rate to match what we're asking for in the budget here or in the bylaw, but maybe incrementally implementing the flat rate, either $5 a year for the next 2 years, or 2 times $7.50, something like that, where it's not such a big hardship.
Okay. Councillor Naka, one more kick.
I like the idea of the incremental increases as opposed to just getting that one lump hit at the time, but I also agree that, I mean, we've been hearing this from the start that, they're not paying for themselves, and they should. So somehow I need to find a happy medium for me that I can be comfortable with.
Mayor Cox. Councillor.
Few points to consider. The $417,000 increase, does that include the water treatment facility? Okay, but aren't we looking at partnering with the MD and other organizations and putting a water treatment facility on the north side of the lake in the future?
That's
Which would be covered by a $100 million grant?
way down the road though.
That's so far down the road.
How far though?
I would guess at 10 years
Okay, so,
at least, yeah.
okay, what is the life expectancy of this water treatment facility?
We can direct that to Mr. Martinson.
I would think at least 20 years.
So then it would be. This water treatment facility doesn't need to be replaced within the 10-year program, so we wouldn't have to plan to replace that facility. Because it should be part of that. I'll just continue from home.
Mm-hmm.
If we raise our rates, the MD will raise their rates. The reason their rates are higher is because they're planning to increase the cost, or they include the cost of all their piping replacements all the way through. So we'll never have the same rate as them. We can increase our rates. Go ahead.
I was just gonna comment on the MD rates. My understanding of their rates is they keep the same rates across all of their service points, and so they basically average all of their costs between the various water treatment plants they have in the various communities, Gruard and all of them. So they average their costs, and that's what they all pay. So you're right, we're never gonna have the same rates, but the fact that their rates are higher based on an average tells us that ours, that's what they're averaging their costs to be, is much higher than ours. So it tells us that we're not charging enough.
Well,
Yeah.
Can I respond? Okay, but to look at it also though, how many miles of piping do they have versus us? And like they take in all the water co-ops throughout the countryside, Gilwood, Banana Belt, everywhere else. I don't know how many miles they have compared to us. I'm imagining it's 10, 20 fold. Right, so
Don't
they're
the
gonna have
co-ops
to have
pay for
a
that?
cost.
Yeah.
What's that?
The co-ops pay for that?
The co-ops pay
The-
for
the-
their own pipes.
Most co-ops actually become part of the MD. Riverbend is not. And the little one here just on the west side of town with Cox as the chair is not. But the rest are part of the MD now.
Yeah, but when they were all put in and stuff, that was all paid for by the landowners at the time and stuff. So it's not comparing the same things, I don't think.
No, what I'm saying is, but to replace all that piping is how much more it costs.
In 50 years?
Lot more than us.
Like how many?
But
But
the MD is irrelevant in my opinion, so.
Which brings a point, they will cover those costs and replacements through amortization. And if we ignore the fact of amortization for this facility, I think we're doing ourselves a disservice, and we don't have to look very far. We just have to look at a lift station that cost us $2 million. And that's partly as a result that it was never really factored into the amortization. Councils of the day decided not to do this and not to fix this at that time, and then it left us with this huge hit. So I'd caution everyone if we look at this and say, well, we're not gonna include the amortization in this, or maybe we shouldn't include it. I understand what Mayor Cox is saying, but at the same time, if we don't take into consideration the amortization of this facility and our utilities infrastructure, then when do we do it? Do we leave it for the next council? Mayor Cox?
I take exception when you say that ignore the amortization. I didn't say ignore it. I said, I don't think we have to go 100%. We could pick a figure of perhaps 75%, and that would still give us enough room to move on this. But I don't think 100% is I don't think we're ever gonna have to pay 100 cents on the dollar to do infrastructure on that. So they're gonna come up with other programs, and it's gonna be covered by some portion of the provincial government. So again, asking our taxpayers to do 100 cents on the dollar, I don't think is fair to them at this point.
I like that 75% number. So, we've debated this a little bit. And we've had a request for recorded vote, and it looks like there's gonna be some work required on this, by the looks of it. Any further discussion? Any new information? Seeing none?
I'm confused. How would it look if we were to, so you're saying that this 100% includes the amortization of the water treatment plant? Is that right, Kelly? Like
Yes.
So, have we looked at the numbers if we weren't considering it 100%? And why would we consider it 100%? I agree with them. Like, why would we consider it 100% when we would always be dealing with grant monies when we are doing infrastructure to a certain degree? And have we seen that number? Like, how would that reflect in this bylaw if we were to look at it at a 75%? Have seen that at all?
No, we haven't, and the reason we haven't is because we haven't directed staff to give us, if we were to direct administration to see what those numbers would look like at 50 or 75%, we could have that information for us. And that's the beauty of this dialogue right now, is that we're coming up with those strategies. And yeah, so we don't have that right now at this time. Nor do we have it on what it would look like on an incremental scale. We don't have those numbers. So, I mean, those things we can ask staff to come back with and have the numbers for us, so that we can look at this and then, but we have to direct administration to get those numbers for us in that way. So we need somebody to make that motion if we so desire. But we do have a motion on the floor. Any?
Mr. Chair, if I may be able to shed a little bit of focus on things. This bylaw was brought about because of the utilities pricing policy that council approved sometime, I think, in the spring. So that's where it comes from. A standing decision that council made 6 months ago, something like that. And it's brought forth. So you pretty much already made that decision back in June for this bylaw. This bylaw is just kind of a routine kind of thing. It's almost like the tax rate bylaw. Once you approve the budget, the tax rate bylaw just falls into place. Now the fact about grants, just to clarify that, the grants that we get aren't specific to water and sewer. The MSI capital could easily be applied towards roads. The fact is, it does cost money to build the infrastructure and to replace the infrastructure, and the income statement properly records the costs, both the amortized costs and the out-of-pocket costs. Now keep in mind that the capital costs are out-of-pocket at the time that you actually pay for the project, so even amortization is a cost. It's just that it's spread out over a period of time, and it's a real cost. Really what you're doing here is you're transferring the burden from one set of ratepayers to another set of ratepayers. We're not getting any more money out of this because I've heard council say that they want to reduce tax revenues if this bylaw passes, and that's fine. Really what you're doing is you're transferring the burden from taxpayers to utility ratepayers. And in my opinion, I think it's a fair transfer because they're paying for the service that they use. Doesn't really matter in the end if you defeat third reading, doesn't really matter. We're still gonna incur the same amount of costs that we've always been incurring. We're still gonna have the same amount of revenues that we already have. So, bottom line of it is, you're just shifting burden. That's the biggest thing. You're shifting burden from taxpayers to utility ratepayers. And if you come through with pass a resolution that you want tax revenues to be reduced for the amount of additional utility revenue coming in, that's fine. And so it's somebody's going to have to pay eventually in the long run. So it's a question of who. Just wanted to provide a clarification for council.
Thank you. Mr. Tronco.
As a matter of fact, I had a long discussion with Municipal Affairs, and not just Municipal Affairs, I'm watching the St. Albert debate on cost comparisons and trying to mitigate expenses by making the utility rates cover that. And it was just passed in St. Albert, where full cost recovery on the use of water and sewer. The debate went
Full cost recovery?
Yeah, full cost recovery, including amortization. 2009, the government required that every municipality include amortization in the accounting. So it's something that came from the from the government. Herb made a good point. Part of the burden that we have in our tax situation is because we're using tax dollars to subsidize utility usage. And so you see that big variance in terms of some of the graphs that you've seen. It's not by accident. We've done this for so long. Most municipalities are moving towards full cost recovery. And I think, Mr. Chair, you're right, that also a question of what the municipality wants. Do you want to move 2 steps or 3 steps? And I think that's a consideration that council may want to think about. We could go back with this bylaw and say, well, just bring a 75% of the cost recovery, which is 75% of 400,000 or 50% of 400,000, or you could pass all of it today. But I think we are moving towards the right direction in having this debate.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, we have a recorded vote requested. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion defeated. Mayor Cox.
I'd like to make a motion to direct administration to provide information regarding the top 20 water users in our municipality for council's information.
Discussion?
I'll amend that, the top 20 residential and the top 20 commercial.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor, discussion. Got it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I think that information can be provided, but if my recollection is right, we can't provide names of who the top users are. I think it's a FOIP issue. We've been through that already, so we can't give you names of usage. I went through that with the treasurer that investigated that. We can't just give you names that this a person is. It's a FOIP issue.
Is it a FOIP issue regarding industry though?
Do you want to speak to that?
No, because that's not personally identifiable, so we
Right,
could break it down by
residential.
industry sector, or we could do that.
Yeah. Residents, the other problem.
Residential, non-residential, commercial use.
So if we had this and it said that, commercial use, there was high commercial use by 3 companies and we don't know which ones they are, is that gonna be of any value?
I would actually like to investigate that as to FOIP because I don't believe that that's true. I don't know, but I will ask, I'm going to be getting something in writing, please, from FOIP.
Well, Madam Chair, I think the treasurer just corrected what I just said. The non-residential, we can provide the names of non-residential, or we can't.
Well, anything that's personally identifiable, like you can identify an individual or a corporation, is a protection of privacy issue. So, we don't provide names, you can do that. You can break it down by sector, like industry sector, commercial, industrial, residential.
But can you identify a company, for example, say, High Prairie Laundry?
We're not supposed to.
Can't do that.
It's their own right or their own privacy as to how much water they use, the gas they consume.
So a company's name is the same as a person's name, and then you can't identify the company.
Right.
Any further discussion? Do you want to?
I would like that in writing from FOIP, but I will get my own, I will have it in writing because I don't believe that that identification of who your top users are is a FOIP issue. It'd be different if I was saying who's most in the rears. Who's using the most amount of gallons of water? Sorry, you can say it's FOIP or not, I'll listen to the FOIP people.
I think the biggest concern, or at least where we'll get the most information is from the industry side of things. I mean, obviously, we're looking at the cement factory and West Fraser and and our hospital.
The
and
aquatic center.
The aquatic center and the arenas. Those absolutely are gonna be gobbling up water. But I'm not sure what benefit it would be for identifying the top 20 houses in town.
Well, I would think that some of them are apartment buildings. And those would be residential.
Unless
That's
they're
not gonna
metered.
be commercial.
Unless they're metered.
Some of those apartment buildings are not metered.
True. Councillor Empter?
I think it would be very valuable to know on the industrial commercial side, You've got places such as the hospital who doesn't pay any property tax, who's now gonna see a big increase in their utility rates, which would help. However, if you look at the rec board, we're gonna see a big jump, both of the arenas, right, making ice. The aquatic center though would go up quite a bit. No tax revenue, and it's just gonna come back again. So I'm gonna find out from the rec director what the effect would be and give you concrete information for December 10th meeting.
Mayor Cox.
And I would also wonder, if you're gonna talk that way, why don't we have residential, commercial, industrial? Why don't we have other classes of water usage? Why is it all just residential and non-residential and mobile homes? I mean, if you had industrial, you could set a rate for industrial. If you had institutional, you could set a rate for the hospital. Like, we don't have enough classes as far as I can see. But again, if you don't have who your top 20 users are, you're not gonna be able to say, well, okay, here's the industrial. There's 14 industrial and there's only 1 institutional. Why not set a class for institutional? However.
Can we direct that too? Mr. Tobacco.
I'll speak to that if you like.
So, okay, Mr.
If it ever gets challenged at the Alberta Utilities Commission, it'll lose because in order to justify different rates for different classes of users, we have to then say there are different costs for different classes of users. And at this point, water that comes out of the tap costs the same no matter who the user is. It's a process, not a job costing system.
Why can't we do that with taxes then, Herb?
Pardon?
Why can we do it with taxes then?
We only have 2 tax rates, residential and non-residential. Water we have, water's well, we have a commercial rate. Oh no, wait a second, it's a price per liter for water, doesn't matter, cubic meter, doesn't matter whether you're residential or commercial.
Councilor.
I was just gonna comment that the Utility Commission, or AUC actually, the Alberta Utility Commission, looks after electricity also. And that's not the way it works for electricity. There are different rates for each one. And it's broken down, like there's a lot of different rates. That's probably off the top of my head 15, 16. But I don't know how it works for water.
Would you like to vote on your motion, or would you like to postpone until you get information from the board?
I'll withdraw.
Okay, motion's withdrawn. Which brings us back to Councilor Panasi.
I'd like to make a motion to direct administration to come back with a revised bylaw that phases in the price of water in 2 options, one in 2 years and one in 3 years. See what the difference would be.
And is that with a correlating decrease in taxation?
Well, I think there's a difference here that we have to approve the bylaw, and then we can make a motion to say that we're going to reduce the tax rate by that amount. So I don't know if we can fit that all into one until that's our understanding of what this utility rate change is gonna result in. But I think we need to make sure that we pass the bylaw, then pass the motion that it's going to reduce the rates accordingly. And we have to decide whether it's worth phasing in over 2 years or whether it's over 3. I'm not sure which is better at this point, but I'd like to see the options.
And this is just one, when I was looking at this is just one vehicle, one part of the tax reduction strategy. This is just one portion of it. Is there other ways that we can find efficiencies? Are there other ways that we can better manage, cut costs? Don't know, but those are the exercises that we'll be facing. And so if we can at least look at this, then we've started the ball rolling. And that's something that we've clearly heard from the community over and over and over again, both from the residents and from the business. And we've done well in the first year in maintaining sort of an even keel and some reduction. Now we have an opportunity to further actively and proactively reduce the tax, and hopefully in a responsible way. You put it up, frown, and then put it down.
Contentious. P-shell game. You're not reducing taxes, you increase utilities. We had a businessman come in here and he goes, if you lower my tax but you increase my utilities, what does that do for me? Nothing.
What's your suggestion?
Looking for the efficiencies, looking for other issues or concerns. Shuffling it from one ledger to another ledger is not a decrease in cost.
No, but it's allowing us to recoup and actually fund appropriately that portion that is right now currently underfunded.
But we already are doing it. We're just doing it through a different path.
Right, but this way, it clearly is in the ledger book. If we want to use the ledger book, then it's rates covering the cost of utilities, not taxes covering the cost of utilities. And as a ratepayer, then it's spread out more evenly and fairly and equitably across the whole town. Because all users will be paying that increase, not just the the people who pay the taxes. Agree or disagree?
Well, just as you pointed out, institutional, a lot of them, there's no taxes, right? So it would be spreading it out more fairly.
Would be
For users are paying.
better that way, but it's gonna hit us, our taxpayers on the aquatic side or the rec side. We'll find out what it does. We just need more
Not
information.
necessarily, but yeah, I hear you.
And they're only one of the many users in town, so, I mean, yes, it might increase that a little bit, but all of the other users that are using water are not subsidized by the town. So it is gonna end up in a net increase for the town, in my opinion.
Yeah, cause the way I look at it now is really the high rate taxpayers is subsidizing our water rates, the taxpayers, not the rate users, right, not the users of the service. So we do have to make it more equitable.
And I think we all agree on that direction, it's just, what we've heard today is just phasing it in and over what period, so.
Mm-hmm. And looking at that amortization aspect of it.
So now we have that motion on the floor.
Can we be a little bit more specific, on how, so you want 2 bylaws?
Yes, I'd like to have 2 bylaws brought forward to compare.
Okay, and they're comparing the price of water?
Water and sewer phased in over 2 or 3 years. Now, I see Herb shaking his head, so maybe we can have a comment from him on why, but I'd like to have the options.
Mr. Chair, if I may, what I suggest is a report prepared by the administration, not a bylaw, but a report prepared by the administration addressing my members' concerns. And then, once that report is presented, we'll present a recommendation to council, and the council can render a decision on it, in which case then it would move forward to a bylaw being prepared.
Okay.
That suffice? Thank you.
I'm fine with that amendment, Crystal.
Okay. Do you want me to read it?
Please.
Moved by Councillor Panasic that Council direct administration to provide a report that phases in the price of water and sewer in 2 options, 1 in 2 years and 1 in 3 years.
Could you read that again?
Moved by Councillor Panasic that Council direct administration to provide a report that phases in the price of water and sewer in 2 options, 1 in 2 years and 1 in 3 years.
The phases in the price of water, what is that?
Water and sewer rates.
Cost recovery.
Is that what it's, I didn't hear that.
That's
You
not what
said-
you guys said.
Brian,
Is that what you want?
Yes.
So
The rates on a cost recovery basis, phased in over 2 and over 3 years.
cost recovery?
Full cost recovery, yeah.
With 100% amortization.
Yes.
I'd like to make a friendly amendment to that if I may. I really like the idea of looking at a 75%. Now, when it comes to grants, who knows what the grants are gonna be out there? So whether we can't really rely on that, but I think that if we look at it from 75% amortization, one more way of trying to minimize the impact on taxpayers and rate users. I'd be a lot more comfortable with the 75% amortization versus 100%.
If I can, I mean, we have to come up with 100% amortization in either tax dollars or in utility rates. It has to be there at 100%. So whether we put it on the utility ratepayers or whether it's on the tax ratepayers, it has to be there. So in my opinion, it should be on the utility ratepayers. I agree that when it comes time to rebuilding, it probably isn't going to be 100%, but we have to account for it that way. If those tax dollars come in and we're getting those tax dollars, it can be used within the town. It's going to cover the costs of those rates. That money that we bring in for amortization can still be used as capital reserves for when we need it. So I'm fine with it at 100%.
Okay, fair enough. Any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. Very good. And now, actual projected and budget statement of operations, page 20, 5A2. Now we need to back up. Let's see.
Well, what happened to 5A1? Statement of operations. Oh, I see, yes, okay, yeah,
Good.
5A2, yeah.
Councillor Emmer.
Make a motion to receive for information. I'd also like to thank administration for providing the report. Providing, what I meant to say, I'm sure.
Noted. Discussion. Councillor Emmer first.
I was just gonna ask, on the expense side, is the purchase of the town building budgeted for next year? And if so, under what line?
The town building is budgeted for budgeted in 2014.
2014?
Yes,
Okay,
as part of capital.
okay. How about the tanks at the airport? Is that in 2014 or 2015?
Times 2014
2014? Okay.
capital.
Then, I'm just wondering why the, expected expense for 2015, the airport, is so high.
Operations.
But we're not,
Yeah,
we're
it's
10%.
It's like it didn't come out at all.
Remember, it's a big decrease, the new municipal and intermunicipal agreement. I would expect that to drop drastically. Okay. No, it's just.
No, you make a good point, and we've talked about it, so I'll let,
That's why I was
and
thinking.
within administration, we look at things differently, so I'll let Herb speak to that.
No,
Yeah, please, Herb, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The intermunicipal agreement was just approved the last meeting, and we haven't had time to adjust the budget for the airport. So what you're seeing is the budget for the airport before the intermunicipal agreement was approved. And when I have some time, I will then go through the amounts and readjust. But in the airport, $10,000 is included in additional amortization for those fuel tanks. $100,000 divided by 10 years useful life gives you your $10,000 a year. So that's why it went up a little bit from, like the 2015 budget is a little higher than 2014 budget.
Thanks, Eric.
If you do look at, just looking at the trends then, 2012 is 80, and goes 190. In 2014 was expected, and we're looking at being 137, probably due to tanks. 147 then. I'm just looking at the 80 jumping to 147 in 3 years. That's a.
And again, that'll be reflected once these are.
No, but still, if you're running a business and over a 3-year period you get a 70% increase in cost, what happened?
People running concession at the arena would ask the same question.
I would wonder why we are including the amortization of the tanks in our airport 2015 budget when that will be a capital cost and then therefore will not be.
That's a good point.
Okay, so that's part of the.
No, I don't think that's, let's restate the fuel tank. Can we please restate the costing for the fuel tank in terms of the airport operations cost?
Mr. Chair, on our books, the fuel tank is on our books as a $100,000 capital purchase. And until such time as it gets taken off our books, I don't know if it ever will get taken off unless the CMB decides to buy it from us, we'll still have to record that amortization. So that's the response there for the $10,000 amortization. Now, as far as Councillor Enter was saying about the airport, we've consistently come in under budget with the airport in our actual expenses. It's something that has been brought up every once in a while. Why are we consistently underspending compared to the budget in the airport? And it has been mentioned, and to some truth to it, is maybe the airport, we didn't pay as much attention to it as the other core services in the town. So, although we had the budget for it, we didn't spend that much money on the airport. But it becomes a moot point now with the MD managing 90% of the expenses.
So, Madam Mayor, with respect to the recordings, our capital is normally recorded at the capital, and then the amortization is amortized through operations.
So, Mr. Chair, you could have other things like this. In fact, you could have lots of things in your budget that you're amortizing for, and we don't even have them anymore. We have no need for them, or.
No, generally the amortization amount is about 1.8 million, and it's all divided into the departments. Yeah. And I know when I first did the first budget, I know what you were talking about when you talk about removing amortization. I separated the operational expenses and then brought in amortization and then applied capital revenue through that. It's another form of looking at it. If you do those kinds of recording, like you suggest, you'll see that there's a surplus in the operational. But then what it does is that it can mislead us to think that we're doing well. And so by factoring in the amortization, we are forced to rethink in terms of efficiency or trying to look at ways to balance the books. So that's why it's more working.
Councillor Rose.
Just further on the amortization of the tanks, it's a 90-10 split now. So why wouldn't we just amortize 10%? Because when it comes to be and there may be replacement in 20 years, that way the agreement sits, all we'll be responsible for is 10%, right?
But we're just writing off an asset worth 100,000 or 10,000 a year.
I guess.
That's all we're doing. Correct?
Mr. Chair, we must say, going forward, we're responsible for 10% of the costs. Being this cost was incurred in 2014, we still got it on our books. We still have to amortize it. Unless the MD were to buy it, if they were to buy this asset from us, they would be responsible for the amortization on it. But there's nothing in the intermunicipal agreement talking about transfer of fuel tanks. So we're still going to have certain fixed costs on the airport that we're still going to incur, still have to be reported, and one of them is amortization. So even though we're responsible for 10% of the operating costs going forward, plus, and I'll have to talk to the treasurer at the MD and see just how we're going to work out the total cost of the airport, whether they'll include our amortization in with the total costs and actually maybe be cutting us a check.
Because aren't they
for the
going to
90%
amortize it as well?
Pardon?
Aren't they going to amortize it as well?
their portion?
No, we're gonna amortize what we own and they're gonna amortize what they own.
Okay, so who's gonna amortize the terminal?
Well, we will, but what I think will probably happen is we'll take the MD's costs and we'll take the town's costs, we'll add them all together. 90% will go to the MD, 10% will go to the town. So there'll be an adjustment in there. Now, we'll have to, since the town's responsible for 10%, anything that we pay over the 10%, I would expect to get a check from the MD to cover that. But I'll have to talk to the treasurer at the MD and see just what his thinking is on it. And go from there.
Okay, so this number here though is gonna be drastically different.
It's
Yes.
gonna be different,
Yes.
yes, once we factor in the 10% costs. So I gotta do a little bit of work on that.
Any further discussion?
Well, I was just gonna mention, it becomes awfully complicated when you're trying to amortize these things in a cost-sharing agreement like that. I'm glad I got some accountants working on that. It hurts my head sometimes.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the floor for receive for information. Councillor Amateur.
Thanks, man.
No problem, buddy.
Okay, I actually see that Councillor Panasic has questions by it too, I was hoping he'd ask. The emergency and bylaw services, I'm just looking at it going from 480 to 586, projecting 606 this year and budgeting 746 next year. Well, again, over a 3-year period, we're seeing quite an increase, but is that the 100,000 for the RCMP?
That's correct.
So 100,000, 706, and then just natural costs on top. Still.
Mayor Cox.
That 100,000 would have been in 2013. So, if you've already got it in 2013, you can't put it, it's still 200,000.
That would have been in 2014.
No, it started in 2013.
No, but we only did 30,000 or something. We went to
Right.
100,000 for the 2014. But yes, you're right. We're still jumping another $140,000 on top.
Big jump.
It is when we're trying to find those cuts.
Should it not also include the fire chief increase?
Yeah.
But that his salary was already from approved this May or something. It would be part of the projected 606, so maybe it would jump to like 630, 625, but not. There's something else there to get to 745. There's another $100,000 for sure that I don't know about or don't understand. Sorry.
Do you have any access for the emergency and bylaw services? Immediately, I know it's tough to try to recollect.
Well, the one thing I can say is that we've consistently come in under budget in a lot of areas in the operation side of things. And emergency service is one where they've got a budget and right or wrong, they didn't spend all the money in their budget. So what happens is we've got an actual, and I talked to the fire chief about it and he said, well, I didn't do this year and I didn't do that last year. But I want to keep it in the budget for 2015 because I want to be able to do it if the conditions are right. And some of it's training, some of it's fire equipment, fire protection. I know he beefed up his budget for recruitment in there. So that's what's happened is we've been budgeted a certain amount, we've spent less. And the problem with that sometimes is, as governors, you look at it and you say, do they really need the money that they're asking for in the budget? Talk to our managers and they say, well, you know, it's nice to have because then I've got it there if I need it and I don't have to run back to council and ask for more money sometime down the road. So it's a balancing act. That's what we try to do. So we might be guilty of maybe over budgeting a little bit and then coming in on the actual less. And I'd rather have that happen than under budget and then spend more than what you've given us for a budget and then have to come back for more money. But like I say, it's a balancing act. And I guess as long as we're able to spend less than we budget, everybody probably should be happy with it. Once we start spending more than what we've got budgeted, then there's a problem that happens. So by setting the budget maybe a little bit higher than what we're actually spending, you basically avoid us coming back like the library did last meeting, come back and ask you for 10% more. Well, what we try to do is budget enough so we don't have to come back and ask you for 10% more sometime down the road.
Any further discussion? Everybody having done their homework? I hope. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor of receiving for information? Carried.
Mr. Chairperson?
Yes.
Will we be getting, could you ask the administration, will we be getting something similar to this for our budget deliberations? Only a breakdown, more detailed by line? I would like to see this with the actual
You should make a
line
motion.
department. I'd like to make that a motion. That we receive a detailed statement of operations in this format by department for our budget deliberations.
Discussion?
This one, we can provide this, right, in this format, detailed information.
Yes, absolutely. In fact,
Good.
council's provided with a detailed statement of operations every month, and when I prepared the budget, I also presented, everything that you see here, except I didn't have a 2014 projected. Come, February, when you do your budget deliberations, we should know what the year-end figures are, so there will be no need for a projected year-to-date actual will be to December 31st.
Mr. Chair, in this particular format.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Just that it won't have projected.
Yeah.
It won't have that column projected. It'll have all the other columns. It'll have 2002 actual, 2013 actual. It'll have 2014 year-to-date, which will be December 31st. It'll have 2014 budget, 2015 budget.
But no projected.
No project. There will be no need for a projected.
Okay, because
So year-end
after the
figures.
year, okay.
Any further discussion?
And I'd like to add to that, I'd like, the report to have two reports, one with amortization and one without.
Can we have that read back, please? Thank you.
Moved by Mayor Cox that council direct administration to provide a detailed statement of operations by department for the 2015 budget deliberations, and that the report be split into two reports, one with 100% amortization and one with 0% amortization.
Any
In
fur-
this format? In this format, is that how? It doesn't say that in that motion.
Okay, in the statement of operations format provided on November 26, 2014.
Sorry, what did you say? Format provided in
The statement of operations format provided on November 26, 2014, regular council meeting.
Please.
Moved by Mayor Cox, the council direct administration to provide a detailed statement of operations, format provided in November 26, 2014 regular meeting of council by department for 2015 budget deliberations, and that the report be split into two reports, one with 100% amortization and one with 0% amortization.
Councilor Canassa.
I just have one question, and I suspect it's gonna be heard. Like, I appreciate that, it's nice nice to have another viewpoint and stuff. I just wondering, with the amortization, does that take a long time to produce? Are we spending a lot of money creating that second report, or can this be, I'm assuming it's gonna be fairly easy, but I just wanna ask the question if it's reasonably easy to produce that second report without amortization.
Mr. Chair, yes, it'll be easy to produce the report, and just to refresh council's memory, the reason that report is not presented to council on a regular basis is because council agreed that seeing a report dealing only with one report with amortization included was the way to go. But it will take basically the same amount of time to produce the report with amortization separated out. So you'll still see the amortization will just be separated out from the functional areas.
Well, and if that's the case, you know, Mayor Cox would like to see that for her reasons, I'm fine with that. I know I don't need to see it, but that's why I wanted to find out if it wasn't going to be too extensive of work, and it doesn't sound like it will be, so.
Any new information, new questions? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Carried. Moving right along. Councillor Abter.
I'd like to make a motion that we postpone 5A3 until Deputy Mayor Carrier is here on the December 10th council meeting.
Discussion?
And we're gonna be missing another councillor.
What's that, sorry? He's the one that made the motion to have it brought forward. The 5A3. Councilor Carey had asked.
Sorry. The operating budget?
No.
5% or
The 5% reduction, the 10% reduction.
His motion.
Yeah, he wanted it.
Yeah, I know, sorry.
Okay.
I'm just thinking we're not gonna get everybody. That's what we're trying for.
Councillor Panasic, then Kelly.
I think there's some important things that we need to discuss in this, in terms of whether this is sort of where we would like to see cuts being made or not in this budget. So I'd like to see some discussions around this at this time. So that's my.
Any further discussion? I too would like to look at this and discuss some of it. We don't have to necessarily, we can always revisit it again when Councillor Carrier comes back. And that's one option. But we do have it for our reading, and I'm sure that Mr. Tobacco would be available if we had questions, or possibly her, if that's all right. And then we'll be better informed when Councillor Carey is here for the next meeting. I would just say that, again, when we're looking at a cut rate and going across the board of 5%, 10%, when the federal government chooses to close down 9 military offices for our Veterans Affairs, they tell Veteran Affairs, shut down 9 offices. When they choose to reopen 9 new offices, it's not Veteran Affairs that does it, it's the government telling Veteran Affairs, we're opening up the 9 new offices. When they take $2 billion that is sitting there for foreign aid that hasn't been spent and decide to turn that into general revenue, the government does it. It's not our foreign services that decide. So if we're looking at coming up with a 5 to 10%, please at least try to have an idea. Do some homework, do some legwork as to where you think there are some deficiencies that need to be cut, because you will get the soft services cut first, which I agree. We have to run the town. That's the first and foremost priority. So if you're asking to make a 5 or 10% cut straight across the board, be prepared. Be careful what you ask for. Mayor Cox.
I don't think that Councillor Carrier asked for a across-the-board cut in the sense that he asked for suggestions and implications and the calculations done by the administration as to what exactly could be done and what impact would this have. So for you to say, well, no, the government tells them to shut down 9 offices, the provincial government walks in and says to all departments, we want you to cut 10% and we don't care where you dig it, but it's up to you to make those cuts and bring us back what the implications will be of those departments. And that is what the provincial government does on a regular basis. And every department comes up with programs that they're going to cut, and here's the implications for cutting these programs. And I think that that is what Councillor Carrier asked for, was tell us what programs you've got, what is the cost of them, and where can it be cut. And if it is, what are we going to hear for feedback from the town, approximately? Some idea. That's why he wanted implications and explanations. It's pretty easy to sit here and say, oh, it's the grants. Come on. Let's take a look at the snow removal. How many times are we going to do snow removal? As a matter of fact, the town of Slave Lake is just reviewing their snow removal policies, and they are saying what will be the impact of not having the loader follow the grader who is covering up the driveways. What will be the cost if we don't do that anymore? There's a perfect example of a proactive Department of Public Works that is saying, here's an area, it is costing us money, how much flack do you guys want in the town?
Yes.
I think we have a motion on the floor, and we're veering severely away from what the motion was. So I think we should, address the motion, and if we want to discuss this more, maybe we need to bring back a different motion and address this one. I'm not sure if that's the way to go.
I'm comfortable waiting. I mean, if that's the will of council. Call the question. We have a motion on the floor. Could you read that, please?
Moved by Councillor Emter that council postpone the 2015 interim operating budget reductions until the December 10th, 2014 regular meeting of council.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated. So, here we are, back at it. So when,
Do we need a motion?
yes. Are you making one?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council forward the 2015 operating budget reduction report presented to the 2015 interim budget deliberations.
Any questions, any debate, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. All those in favor?
Well, I'd like to have some discussion on that.
Okay,
You're too quick.
alright, let's get her going.
Perhaps I would like to hear Herb's or Kelly's interpretation of this budget and the rationale behind it. Like, I did read the rationale, but I'd just like to hear it verbally.
Point of order, the motion on the floor is to move the presentation to the future interim budget debate, not for today.
But there's a motion made and there's discussion made on that
No,
motion.
the motion was to move this to the budget deliberations. So it's not to discuss this. The motion we get to discuss is whether to move it or not.
So if I change our mind and make it for information, then we can discuss it. Then that's what I'll do.
You'd like to amend your motion?
I'll amend my motion.
Okay, so we've amended the motion. The council received 2015 interim operating budget reduction report presented for information.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. We are in the process of preparing some other detailed core services report for the purposes for which this motion was also made, in terms of looking at the departments, public works and fire service. This kind of presentation is very innovative thinking. And I applaud her in terms of the fact that it's kind of brought to bear what our core services are and what our non-core services are. It may not solve the problem entirely, but at least it opened my eyes as to why the town's tax rate is that far away with an indoor pool, with second eyes, and all the kinds of infrastructure that we have. Our TCA, when you look at the financial indicator, speaks to the fact that the town of High Prairie has invested heavily in infrastructure, which is a good thing. And for that matter, we're paying some of the heavy prices. If you look at the status quo, and I'll let her speak to that, which is page 26, it addresses the what if budget. If you told administration that you want a 10% cut. So we're taking a certain position and we've cut 10% off the revenue. So we're at 6.3 million, right, in terms of the revenue. Now, we go back then to the expenses and we say, look, you know what? By our analysis, if we are going to suggest cuts, then we want to take it from the non-core services, the non-essentials. What are the non-essentials in our minds? They are not water, sewer, which is very essential. They are not the roads. They are the grants that we give out there. Those are the non-essentials. So we've given the what if, and we've cut that back from what our budget will be from 8.1 to 7.2. Remembering that 10% of $8 million budget is about 800,000, so we are down to 7.2 million. Now, where are the areas that we're going to cut? We said legislative services. All the grants that we sit down and give to the organizations will be cut. We are also saying that recreation and culture is going to suffer in the sense that we give out close to $600,000 to rec board. That will be looked at. We are also saying that we give $180,000 to the library. That's a part of the non-core service. We have to look at that. We are also saying that we give $60,000 to the museum. That we have to look at. That in itself is about $900,000. If we did that, we will be in the same average as any municipality in Alberta. So our best guess scenario when you left us with our 10%, 5%, and 10% cut was to go down and look at the non-essential services. In addition to that, the managers are looking at the core services. Remember that the core services, once you strip off amortization, you strip off the principal payments and the interest payments, you take out even salaries and all of those things, you're barely left with about some $3 million. These guys have been dealing with these budgets for so long that to try to get $800,000 from the non-core, from the core services is almost an impossibility. So, in a sense, this just gives us the field, plus what we have just discussed with respect to the utility rates, core services, what they look like, amortization, what it looks like, non-core services, what it look like, and now gives council the vision to see in what direction they move forward. So this is the presentation we have. I don't know what I have. You may want to add something to it, but that's Mr. Chair.
If I may, Mr. Chair, one thing that I just like to mention to council is that municipal, our organization largely is a fixed cost organization. I know I've heard before somebody mention, well, what happens if we don't clear the roads every second day, or if we allow the snow to build up? You're not really going to save very much. And you know what you're going to save? You're going to save what it costs for fuel. And I'll tell you why. Because the guys who are on the roads are going to be working, whether they're snow plowing or they're potholing or they're out there changing signs. They get paid 40 hours a week, and they're going to work their 40 hours a week doing one of those operations. So when it comes to a lot of the things in the town here, you almost have to either cut the function out or severely cripple the function in order to save any amount of money. And I'm not talking about $5,000 or $10,000, I'm talking if you want a 5% or a 10% savings. Because you look at a lot of our departments, they're actually costing less than $400,000. That's almost the cost of, well, the administration cost is $400,000. Roads, I know is a 1 point, what have we got there? 1.7? Well, $800,000, I'd triple roads, that's like cutting it in half. But you're not gonna save much money by not plowing the roads. You're gonna save the gas costs, which might be $50, $100 a day. You still got the manpower, you still got the trucks, you still got the amortization. You've got a lot of fixed costs with running a municipality. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about what efficiencies you can have. We're as efficient as we can be. And part of the proof is that we're not overspending. We're not spending more than our budget. When we find efficiencies, we spend less than is budgeted. Problem is, we can't guarantee you that we're gonna find the same efficiencies year after year. There's gonna come a point when we're gonna have to come back to you and say, we need more money to run this place the way you guys want us to run it. Won't happen for 2015 because I think we'll be able to run the place with the same amount of money that we asked for in 2014. So that's good. I don't think there are a lot of municipalities that are gonna be in that same state where they're not gonna be asking for more, but we'll find out next year when the budgets come out. That's all I want to really leave with council, is that we're a large fixed cost organization, and there's not a lot of money to be saved by not plowing the roads. You're gonna save gas and that's about it. You're still gonna have to pay for the manpower, you're still gonna, the truck has already been purchased and still is amortized. So, that, you kinda have it.
Thanks, Herb. Councillor Emmer.
Flipping back to page 22, statement of operations, actual projected and budgeted. If you look at recreation and culture, they went 1.4, 1.3, 1.3, 1.3 basically. So we haven't seen a big increase there. Actually, it fluctuates between 1.3 and 1.4. But if you look at the total operating expenses, it goes from 7 to 7.5 to $8 million in 3 years. So it's not recreation and culture that's our $1 million increase in 3 years. Where is it? If it went up $1 million in 3 years, could we not try and bring it back a bit? And that's got to be done somewhere. Now we have fixed costs: fuel, insurance, buildings, heat, electricity, water, whatever else. But where we can hit is benefits or overtime or some other areas. Grants, definitely. I'm sure everybody in this council will agree that I've talked about grants quite a bit. But there's got to be other areas that we have to look at, because I'm not sure where the $1 million increase is in 3 years. I don't know.
Mayor Cox.
And I actually was sitting here calculating the same thing on page 22, and I see from 2013 to 2015, $1.5 million increase. I imagine that you're going to be saying, oh, some of that is the water, and some of it is electrical costs, definitely. But I believe that if you were to strip that out, which would be something that should be done by administration, is to say, okay, well these are costs that we have no control over. These should be out of your budget, and then look just at what's remaining. We would understand this better, but you keep throwing in costs that we have no control over, and then let's put a bit more in besides, and then it just rolls up even more. So, you know, it's going to be an interesting discussion on 2015, because I don't think we're getting enough information.
Councillor Rose, then Vanessa.
Just a quick question. Can somebody explain to me what interdepartmental charges are in this budget? Probably you, Herb. I don't know if I'll believe any of them.
Okay, Mr. Chair, interdepartmental charges are really two departments that are costs from two departments. One department is the equipment pool department, which maintains all the vehicles. All the costs for the vehicles are included in this functional area called equipment pool. The costs in the equipment pool are allocated to the rest of the public works departments, all your utilities and your roads. And the other thing is, administrative overhead. Part of my salary, part of Kelly's salary, part of the accounting staff's salary, and, the administration is allocated to the different operating departments, such as, in public works, roads, utilities. The reason that we do that is so that a fair share of the costs is allocated to some of these other departments, especially ones where they got ratepayers paying. Just to give you an example, we didn't allocate any administrative overhead to these departments, then you would have the taxpayers subsidizing even more the utility departments, because utilities do have some management overhead associated with them. I spend time doing utility work, Kelly spends time, the accounting staff, we've got one staff member who does utility billing, another one that does receivables.
So that's partly your salary, you're saying like partly your salary, partly Kelly's salary,
Yeah.
but aren't they in another part of the budget?
Yeah, half of the administrative costs are in the administrative department.
Only half?
The other half are allocated to the other public works departments. So, if you could easily make a case that administration's actually costing the town double, what it was in the budget, it's $490,000, probably costing close to $1 million. If my calculations are correct, I believe it's about 50%. Sorry, it's not all of administration, so it's not quite 50%. Things like insurance in the administration, I gotta think in my head here. Insurance is allocated back, that's a $100,000 cost. Some of the management salaries, 50% of the management salaries are allocated, okay, that's right. And 50% of the accounting staff is allocated to the other departments. But it's not all administrative costs, it's selected ones, and I think there are about half a dozen. I'd have to go back and look in the records to see which ones are. But just to give you the concept, administrative expenses are allocated to the public works departments, and the equipment pool, which contains the costs of operating and maintaining the equipment, the heavy equipment, the vehicles, and the mechanics' wages are in there. That's allocated back to the public works departments. Gas, water, sewer, roads, some bit to cemeteries. There was some at the airport too, because we used the public works equipment pool for some of the airport, some of the trucks. So that's what it is. It's an overhead allocation.
Thanks.
Any further discussion?
Couple of questions. One is there just, you just divide those interdepartmental charges evenly across all of the budgets, or it's prorated by the amount of them? How do you allocate that out?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's an interesting question. And how we do it is we allocate it based on the expense, the departmental expense, with some minor adjustments. So if you're, like roads, for instance, there's a big share of the allocation. So does water, so does natural gas. And the ones that bear a smaller share, like waste management, cemeteries, of course, just has, I think, $2,000 in there. The airport was a smaller share. Fire department bears a share. But it's basically departmental expense.
The larger expense, so if I can reword that so I can understand, is saying that if you have a bigger budget, you bear a bigger charge back on those interdepartmental.
That's correct.
Okay. My second question is in your example, in your budget, there was, you took the recreation and stuff, just let me on page 27, you took it from 1.3 million down to 527,000. I'm wondering what was left. What did you see left for 527,000?
Mainly parks. The parks department is in there with recreation and culture. So that's what's pretty much left, just to maintain parks. Cemeteries is separate on top of that. Parks is the big one. Parks, and that includes the amortization for the recreation buildings, swimming pool, arenas.
So your example here is closing all of the rec facilities, all of those things. That's what you showed here.
Well, what it shows there is not issuing any grants. And that's, I'm not saying close them, I'm just saying you would have to get a source of revenue somewhere else. And administration's not recommending this what-if budget. You know, they're just saying, what if we didn't pay these grants, what would the budget look like? That's all it's really saying. It's not making any judgment or any recommendation. In fact, the recommendation is stick with the status quo budget. Not the what-if budget, but the status quo budget. That's our recommendation. We just wanted to give you a different scenario on what if we didn't have to pay any grants, or the town didn't pay any grants. Not saying do that, not even recommend, not even coming close to it. Just giving you an idea of what it would look like if you didn't have it.
Councillor Tanaka, and then we'll call a question.
I thought Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Carrier's motion when he was discussing it was pretty specific as to what he wanted and what he was looking for. And really this doesn't, to me, this doesn't answer his motion that he had as to why you can and cannot make the cuts. I mean, we're looking for areas that we can, you know, lower, like Mayor Cox said, and what was discussed. What would we save if we didn't plow back alleys and went to the front in the wintertime? What would we save, and as Deputy Mayor Carrier was saying during his motion, what would we save if we only plow the streets, you know, instead of at, you know, 3 inches, we went to 4. Like, what would we be saving? And I don't see any of that here, other than basically administration has come back and said, well, this is what this looks like, but you need to cut the grants. And I'm really disappointed with this, because I was hoping we would see some actual flesh out of the budget saying, okay, this is what this looks like, this is what this will look like, this is what this will look like if we change these things. Unless I'm missing something here, I don't know.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
That information will be coming to you at the December 10th meeting. The managers are working on that. This has just been a big overview. And I will encourage the council also to take a look at the audited financial statements, because sometimes the way things are recorded in the audited financial statements speak more to the issues than just our internal system, where sometimes we add amortization, we don't add amortization. So that report is coming. Just a review of this, and I would like you, anybody, to take a look at it. 2010, our expenditures were 10.5, 2011 it was 10 million. 2012 it was 8.7, 2013 went to 9.4, and 2014 we are at about 8.1. Part of the fluctuation is always due to the gas in terms of how it goes back and forth.
So could you repeat yourself, please?
Yeah. 2010, 10.5.
This is, you're talking revenue? Or
I'm talking about the expenses.
Okay, that's
Expenses, right. So, but it'd be nice to take a look at this. Is very informative. Gives us a good picture, because with the audited financial statement, we're looking at a straight way of adding amortization. Sometimes in our system, when I started, I didn't add amortization to operating costs. So there might be some not very consistent information, but this is available for council from 2010. And you'll see that expenditures are more on a flat line than anything else. But we'll have that report for you. The managers are working on it, and we'll present it at the December 10th meeting as well.
Okay, we'll call the question. Thank you. So, that council for the 2015 interim operating budget,
No.
for information, pardon me.
Receive for information.
So, all those in favor? There you go. And we'll take a 10-minute break.